Well, what about the OA?
The OA is in. Was a good staker.
I know, it's like this can go one of two ways: either no, or actually he's followed the rules, or
He followed the
he has followed the
rules.
rules.
Yeah,
So the OA
he's definitely
can
in.
mint liquid hex.
He can mint liquid X. Yeah, he, according to my calculations, would have 25% of the mintable liquid X. That's why kind of the liquidity address would get something like 30% of the total supply.
Yeah, that's an important part too of the liquidity address would get 30% of this. So they would be able to mint, liquidity address would be able to mint 30%, or it just goes there automatically.
Well, I wanted to also incentivize the liquidity address because, there are these kind of rug pulls happening, so to incentivize the liquidity address to not do any fishy thing, I thought it would be great if the liquidity address gets the 30% of supply in 16 tranches, meaning it can gets its first tranche like stakes, like make that liquidity address a staking ladder over 15 years. And yeah, that's how it's currently is decided, that it will get, every year some extra liquidity, and hopefully provides liquidity with that. That's why it's called liquidity address. And that's also going with my theory about liquidity per se, that I think that you have to nail down liquidity, in the sense, when there's a new token, it's good if the liquidity is not too thick. I think it should be a little bit looser. And as the token progresses and advances in its cycles, it should get thicker liquidity, because thicker liquidity means bigger players can come in. So at the beginning, a bigger player looks at maybe liquid hex and is like, I can't put that much money into it, because the price just moves like ballistic. So a new token where demand is lower should have a looser liquidity, and then over time, I think liquidity should increase as the value grows.
Wow,
That's kind of.
Go ahead.
Mac? No, it's just my theory about liquidity and how liquidity should behave, according, to my theory and analysis so far.
Yeah, no, it's tell you put a lot of time thinking about all these different scenarios and stuff too. Really, really interesting. I have a question here. Will we be able to buy LHEX flat out, which kind of good segue to launch? Like, how does launch work? How quickly will it be available on the market, for example, all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, as I would hope it would go, is that it kind of launches, and that liquidity address will mint its first batch, provide that liquidity between $0.00001 and 55 cents or 56 cents. And I actually brought a chart to show you how I would imagine that liquidity address should distribute its liquidity, and not just equally between. Yeah, I always got charts. Max, who do you speak to?
Shocking.
I always got charts.
Yeah.
Let me show you. And this was also a data. I approached everything in my project with data. And so when I thought about, okay, how should the liquidity address distribute its liquidity between these two ranges, I thought, well, I will look up where the volume happened. And what I did not mention is that I would like to see the liquidity address provide liquidity on a stablecoin pair, and I would like to see EDI being paired with Liquid HEX, which we can also get into because that's also quite interesting why I would decide for that.
Yeah, EDI versus Pulse versus HEX.
Exactly. But then I looked up, okay, where did the USDC volume historically happen? You know, between which ranges? So I made this chart, which nobody has ever seen. I mean, I posted it on Twitter recently, so you might have seen it already. But this is an interesting, cool chart, also for liquidity providers of EHEX or even PHEX, because they can see historical volume happening in those ranges, and maybe they want to set V3 positions in those ranges based on this distribution.
That's what's really cool about this too, is it's not only the fork of HEX, but it's like forking the history of HEX almost. It's like starting from, it's either a homage or it's more of just like, this is how HEX went before. It's really interesting the way you put this together.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, yeah, when I thought, about it and nobody did it, I just wanted to make it happen as kind of the only person having the HEX data available locally on his computer. So I'm like, I have to do it, man.
One other question real quick too is, or I guess observation is, even if you aren't on the, like, say people, aren't on the pristine HEX staker list, or don't qualify for whatever reason, or don't qualify that much, or all that stuff, whatever it is. Let's say they just don't. So the thing I think is making people either maybe less interested in this project is, oh, I don't have a lot of EHEX stakes or a long-term stakes, or they've already ended, or whatever it is. But the idea, I think, what people should really pay attention to is, you're talking about the liquidity being set up super, super low, so you can still participate in it. It's still, I think, to me, it's still interesting. Even if you don't have a lot to mint, that you can get off the market and still participate in the whole, like, ethos of, again, early HEX, regardless if you can mint or not. So, like, minting it's one way to get it, but even if you don't mint it, there's still a lot of interesting things about this project, such as, again, if the liquidity is that low, how long is it going to stay that way? Like, if people are comparing this and they're looking for what HEX did before in a new project, again, nobody's saying it's going to do 10,000x, but it's just really interesting how all these things, all mining, like, have been lined up to say, oh, well, this sounds familiar, that sort of thing. Will it rhyme? Who knows? But, like, the liquidity being started that low, it's not like you're starting at a penny or 5 cents. It's like the previous all-time low, not even the launch price, I guess, but the all-time low. So anyways, thought that was interesting for people to see too.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, I am constructing, like, very similarities and using data to kind of put it together. And it is just something very interesting. And I see a lot of people just engaged with the idea, even if they're excluded. And yeah, when sometimes there's some mystery and perception around it, you can see what happens with stuff like PDI. And then you see all sorts of interesting things happening on chain. And I did not check all of those things, so I'm not claiming anything here. But it's interesting how narratives get shaped just by seeing certain patterns and trends. That's what I wanted to say with it.
Definitely.
And here we can see the volume distribution of, all the USDC volume, which happened on Ethereum. And what we can see that the most of the volume happened between the ranges 4 and 6 cents. So you get 12.5% of all the volume happening there. And also significantly 10% between 2 and 4 cents. And then it's getting quite distributed out, but most of the volume did not happen at the peak. Yeah, and this is how the distribution looks like. And as we can see, only 2.5% was between like HEX's all-time low price and 0.2 cents. So I would think that it would be fairly quick for liquid HEX to come to 2 cents. That's would be my assumptions when you distribute that liquidity out. And once you get to 2 cents, I mean, you're already above EHEX and PHEX price. So that's even the combined one. So I find that kind of interesting.